2:41 p.m. The clocks did not stop. Inside a windowless command space beneath the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower, a junior radar officer said one word he had never said out loud before. Multiple. Not contacts, not returns, launches. The screen bloomed red. 24 vectors, clean separation, coordinated timing. Time to intercept, 11 minutes. The airspace south of the carrier strike group was already constrained. Civilian traffic rerouted hours earlier without explanation. Regional allies quietly grounded. The Eisenhower was operating inside a narrow sea lane, bordered by Iranian-controlled coastline to the north and contested airspace to the west. There was no room to drift, no space to disappear. Power was uneven, but uncertainty was not. The captain stood behind the Combat Information Center, arms folded, watching the arc expand outward from the Iranian coast. No alarm sounded yet. That was deliberate. Sound created panic. Panic killed judgment. This was not a test. If even one missile reached terminal phase, escalation would no longer be theoretical. And everyone in the room knew it. 90 seconds later, the situation changed. The missiles were not aimed at the Eisenhower. Trajectory analysis showed dispersion. Wide arcs, multiple endpoints, not a decapitation strike, not a symbolic warning. This was saturation logic. 14 secondary alerts appeared almost simultaneously. Fixed installations, logistics hubs, airfields, facilities that were not supposed to be vulnerable. The missiles weren't headed for ships alone. They were headed for the architecture of presence. Someone in Tehran, or somewhere pretending to be Tehran, had chosen breadth over certainty. The imbalance of power had shifted. The carrier group had unmatched defensive capability, layered intercept systems designed precisely for this scenario. Iran knew that. So why launch anyway? Inside the Pentagon, a separate clock had started. At 7:11 Eastern Time, the National Military Command Center had received the same data feed. Analysts didn't speak at first. They waited for confirmation, then for pattern recognition, then for intent. Intent was the hardest part, because intent determined response, and response could not be taken back. Subscribe. These moments don't come with warnings. Was this deterrence or rehearsal? 72 hours earlier, the patterns had begun, not loudly, not officially. Just enough to notice, if you knew where to look. Airspace closures along the southern Gulf Coast. No press coverage, no diplomatic protest. Commercial routes adjusted without explanation. The kind of bureaucratic silence that means something is moving beneath the surface. In Bahrain, Fifth Fleet logistics officers flagged irregular repositioning, supply schedules altered, fuel shipments rerouted. Nothing dramatic, just off. Iranian coastal radar units shifted frequencies. Mobile air defense batteries relocated during hours when satellite coverage was thinnest. Again, nothing definitive. But the cumulative weight of small decisions felt deliberate. U.S. intelligence analysts disagreed quietly. Some saw caution, standard posturing during a tense cycle, regional powers flexing without commitment. Others saw preparation, the kind that doesn't announce itself because it doesn't need to. And a smaller group, quieter, older, worried about intention. Because preparation without declaration is the most dangerous kind. It implies certainty. In Tehran, state media ran normal programming. No inflammatory rhetoric, no threats, no slogans, just weather reports and economic updates. That too was a signal, because silence is a choice, and choosing silence while repositioning assets meant someone had already decided what came next. By Monday, U.S. naval intelligence had compiled a pattern brief, 17 indicators, low confidence on timing, high confidence on intent. The brief reached decision-makers who had seen this shape before, except this time, the shape was wider. Dispersed launch sites, overlapping target envelopes, coordinated timing windows that required weeks of preparation. This wasn't reactive. It was scheduled. And no one could say exactly when the schedule would execute. By Tuesday morning, the Eisenhower had adjusted its patrol route. Subtly, just enough to complicate intercept geometry for anyone watching, but not enough to signal fear, because fear invites pressure, and pressure once applied rarely retreats on its own. By Tuesday afternoon, 3 separate intelligence streams reported the same anomaly. Iranian command nodes had gone silent, not offline. Silent. Communications continued. Orders flowed. But the traffic had changed. Compressed. Encrypted beyond baseline norms. Someone was tightening information flow. That meant a decision had already been made. By the time anyone was certain, certainty no longer mattered. At 2:43 p.m., authorization came. Not from Washington. Not yet. From the Eisenhower's operational commander, a decision made inside the narrow span between detection and terminal phase. There was no time for consensus, no time for back channels, no time for diplomatic escalation ladders designed by people who had never stood in a command center watching red arcs converge. The intercept order was issued before the White House Situation Room had fully convened. And that decision, made in seconds, would define everything that followed. The first SM-3 interceptor launched at 2:47 p.m., then another, then another. Short sentences filled the room. Track solid. Solution locked. Commit. No cheering, no celebration, only counting. 1 missile disappeared from the screen, then 2, then 5. The intercepts were clean. Textbook geometry. Exactly what the system was designed to do. But no one relaxed. Because the hardest part of escalation is not the strike, it's the pause after. Inside the Pentagon, a different kind of tension had begun. Early interception meant early commitment. It meant the U.S. had chosen speed over verification, defense over diplomacy, and it meant Iran, or whoever launched those missiles, now had data. Reaction time, intercept thresholds, decision-making speed under pressure, all of it recorded, all of it analyzed, all of it useful. Some officials argued the intercepts had prevented disaster. Others argued they had played exactly as intended. Both could be true. By 2:59 p.m., all 24 inbound missiles were gone. Destroyed outside terminal phase. No impacts, no casualties. 14 bases reported no damage. From a tactical standpoint, it was a success. From a strategic standpoint, it was a question. Because nothing else happened. Iranian state media went dark. No claims, no denials, no footage. No martyrdom narratives. The absence was louder than any broadcast. In Washington, officials chose language carefully. Intercepted objects. Elevated readiness. No further escalation at this time. The Eisenhower stayed on station for 6 hours, then 12, then another day. No strikes followed. No retaliation. The decision not to respond kinetically was itself a decision, and one that divided rooms you will never see. Some called it restraint. Others called it hesitation. No one called it safe. If this happens again, you'll want to recognize it. Was early interception restraint or escalation? 3 weeks later, satellite telemetry revealed an anomaly, not in Iranian behavior, in someone else's. During the 11-minute interception window on that Tuesday afternoon, 3 non-Iranian reconnaissance assets had adjusted orbit, not aggressively, subtly, as if they already knew where to look. The adjustments were minor, fractional burns, repositioning that would be unremarkable on any other day. But the timing was not coincidental. Someone else had been watching, and whoever launched those missiles understood that interception was likely, which raised a darker possibility. What if the missiles weren't the message? What if the message was the response? intelligence analysts began tracing metadata, communication intercepts, orbital mechanics, financial flows that didn't align with stated intentions. What emerged was not a conspiracy. It was a marketplace. Iran had launched the missiles. But Iran may not have been the primary customer. Someone else wanted to see how the U.S. carrier strike group reacted under pressure, how fast authorization flowed, what intercept thresholds looked like in real time, whether diplomatic caution would override tactical speed. The attack had drawn eyes, not just American eyes, and those eyes had measured everything: reaction time, decision latency, defensive posture under saturation. From a strategic research perspective, it was invaluable data. From a doctrine standpoint, it was a breach. Because now other actors knew exactly how close they could get. They knew the timing. They knew the thresholds. They knew the silence patterns. The missiles had never been meant to land. They had been meant to reveal. And they had succeeded. This wasn't about missiles. It was about reaction time. The war never started. No carrier burned, and no bases collapsed. No casualties filled hospital wards in Bahrain or Dubai. There was no press conference, no dramatic UN Security Council session, no primetime presidential address. Just quiet doctrinal revisions. In the months that followed, U.S. naval doctrine shifted subtly. Intercept authorization thresholds adjusted. Defensive postures tightened in ways that wouldn't appear in public briefings. The Eisenhower rotated out on schedule. Its replacement operated differently. Not visibly, just differently. Iranian coastal units resumed normal activity. No follow-up launches, no escalation, but the balance hadn't been restored. It had been tested, and someone had taken notes. Years from now, analysts will debate what 2:41 p.m. really meant. Some will call it a near miss, a crisis averted by speed and capability. Others will call it a data harvest, a live fire experiment disguised as aggression. Both will be correct, because the danger wasn't that it almost started a war. It was that it showed how one could start, not with miscalculation, not with rage, with precision. The missiles never landed. The interceptions worked. The system held. But for 11 minutes, the world existed in a narrower space, a space where defense worked, but only just, where escalation was avoided, but not resolved, where someone learned exactly how close they could get. And the most unsettling part wasn't what happened at 2:41 p.m. It was what didn't, because now everyone involved knows the timing. They know the thresholds. They know the silence patterns. And next time, the decision window may be shorter. History doesn't repeat itself. It escalates. Was this restraint or a warning?